Chicago finally has a young core, a new coach, and a real decision to make. So how do they actually build this roster? Because the Bulls have been stuck in the middle for so long that the biggest risk isn't picking the wrong path, it's refusing to pick one at all. Let me lay out the realistic scenarios and the one I'd run. Here's the plan. 3 realistic paths. Scenario A, fully commit to the youth movement. Scenario B, cling to the middle and chase the play-in. Scenario C, a complete teardown. For each, the cost, the payoff, and the risk. Then my verdict on the smartest build for a team that finally has something to develop. The roster facts are verified. The scenarios are my projections. Let's build. This is Game is Culture. Quick thing before we build, if you like roster construction with real cap and trade logic, subscribe. It's free and it helps a ton. Now, Scenario A. Scenario A, commit to youth. The clear-eyed path. Trade Nikola Vucevic for young players and a pick. Hand the keys fully to Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis. Add a young shooter to space the floor and accept a developmental season. You let Splitter coach up the kids. You give them the heavy minutes and high usage that actually build players. And you let your draft pick land high. It's the path that turns a directionless 31-win team into an actual project with a future. What it gets them is a real foundation and a real lottery shot, the two things a rebuild needs. The cost is another rough year in the standings and the patience of a fan base that's been waiting a long time. The risk is that Giddey and Buzelis plateau rather than pop, but you find that out by playing them, not by burying them behind veterans. This is the only path that actually answers the question of what they have. Scenario B, cling to the middle. The comfortable path and the dangerous one. Keep Vucevic, re-sign or add a couple of veterans, and try to claw into the play-in race for a few more wins and a few more ticket sales. It feels like progress. It isn't. You'd be spending money and minutes to be the 11th best team in the conference. Too good for a top pick, too bad to matter in the playoffs. It's the exact trap Chicago has lived in for years. And the real cost of the middle is hidden in the development. Every veteran minute is a minute Giddey, Buzelis, and the young players don't get, and a non-lottery finish is a worse draft pick on top of it. So the middle doesn't just fail to build a contender, it actively slows down the young core and weakens the draft. For a team this early, chasing 40 wins is the most expensive cheap thrill in basketball. And it's worth understanding why the middle is so seductive, because that's why Chicago keeps falling for it. Mediocrity sells tickets, it keeps a fan base mildly entertained, and it spares a front office the pain of a public teardown. In the short term, 40 wins feels safer than 20, but that comfort is exactly the trap. The safe choice is the one that quietly costs you the most, because it never produces a star and never builds an identity. The Bulls have to be brave enough to be bad on purpose. And Matas Buzelis is the swing that makes the youth path so compelling. A young, ascending wing with real shot blocking and scoring is the hardest type of player to acquire, and Chicago already has one. If he becomes a legitimate two-way star, the whole rebuild has a true cornerstone next to Giddey. So the develop path isn't a shot in the dark, it's a bet on a young player who's already flashing star traits. Giving him the runway to prove it is the single most important thing the Bulls can do. Scenario C, full teardown. The most aggressive path. Move everything not named Giddey or Buzelis, Vucevic, the veteran wings, anyone with trade value, all for picks and young flyers. You strip the roster to its 2 pillars and a war chest, bottom out completely, and aim for the very top of the draft. It's the fastest way to accumulate assets, but it's also a hard sell to a fan base and risks a lost, ugly season that tests everyone's patience. Quick halftime note, if you want the verdict on every team's best path, subscribe, it's free. Now let's put the 3 side by side. Stack them up. Scenario A, commit to youth, develops the core and protects the draft while keeping a watchable team. Scenario B, the middle, wins a few more games but stalls everything that matters. Scenario C, full teardown, maximizes assets but maximizes pain. The honest read is that A and C are both real plans, and B is the absence of one. Chicago's whole history is getting stuck in B. and here's the trap quantified. Scenario B might get Chicago to 38 wins and a play-in loss, which scores terribly on what actually builds a team. No high pick, stunted development, no banner. Scenarios A and C both score far higher on long-term value because they convert the present into the future. In a rebuild this early, a worse record is the better outcome. The middle is the one result to avoid at all costs. The verdict. My call? Scenario A. Commit to youth, full stop. Trade Vucevic for assets, build around Giddey and Buzelis, add young shooting, and let Splitter develop the core through real minutes. It keeps a watchable, competitive team on the floor most nights while still protecting the draft position and the long-term future, which is the best of the rebuild options and the hardest balance to strike. A full teardown is fine too, but A threads the needle between developing real talent and keeping a watchable product. The only truly unacceptable answer is the middle, and that's the one Chicago has chosen year after year for far too long. This is the summer they finally break the cycle. And the sequence is simple. This summer, trade Vucevic, add a young shooter, and clear the veteran logjam. Through the season, play the kids heavy minutes, and let Splitter find out who's real. Then, with a high pick and a clearer picture, decide whether to add a third young piece or keep stacking. Commit, develop, then build. The path Chicago has avoided for far too long. Where could I be wrong? If ownership demands wins and ticket sales, the front office will drift back toward the middle, and there are short-term business reasons to do it. And if Giddey and Buzelis clearly plateau, the teardown becomes more appealing than building around them. But for a team that finally has young talent worth developing, committing to it is the highest expected outcome, and the overdue one. So that's the full picture for Chicago. Commit to youth, cling to the middle, or tear it all down. 3 real, very different paths for a franchise that has avoided choosing one for years, and finally has a young core worth choosing for. Which one would you run? That wraps the Bulls. Drop your build below, and we are so close to 1,000 subs, so subscribe to stay up to date.